Hello everyone and welcome to Echo 1090, the signal that drifts in when the world gets quiet and the lights get low. This isn't just a radio show, it's something older, something slower, something still warm from the inside of a forgotten television set. In our show, Echoes Across the Airwaves, we don't just talk to legends, we call them through static, through memory, through the quantum flicker of something that used to be called a vibe. Tonight, we're reaching out to someone you haven't heard from in decades. He lifted a woman named Frances into the sky and made gravity look like a suggestion. And somewhere in the background there was a watermelon that we all can't forget. Let's ring him up now and see if the past is still picking up. Johnny Castle, this is The Lone Wolf. You're live on Echo 1090 and I think there are more people out there listening than you'd ever expect. Some of them still dream about Kellerman's. Some of them never stop trying to get the lift. Right in their living room. Welcome to the show, brother.
Well, damn, Lone Wolf. I haven't done a radio spot like this in years. It almost doesn't feel real, but something about this frequency feels familiar, like stepping back into a song you forgot you knew the words to, like the wind that she was like once.
Let's go back. The night of the lift at Kellerman's that no one can ever forget. What did that moment feel like?
Well, let me put it like this, Lone Wolf. You ever been holding in a dump on a long road trip with no rest stop in sight, and your stomach's doing somersaults, and your eyes start watering? Then suddenly, like a miracle from the heavens, there's a gas station glowing in the dark like the gates of Valhalla. You make it just in time, and when it's over, you're so light you feel like you're levitating above the toilet. That was the lift. Baby flew, and I felt like a man who just unburdened his soul and his blown-out underpants in one glorious motion. It was release, redemption, and rapture all rolled into one.
And the first time you saw Baby, fill in our listeners around the world on how you really were feeling in that moment.
Man, that was like finding a slice of cold pizza at the back of the fridge after a 3-day bender. You weren't expecting it, but once you saw it, you just knew it was gonna save your life. She was holding that watermelon like it was the last overvalued fuzzy teddy bear prize you see in a summer carnival. She looked like she'd wandered into the wrong hallway of reality, and somehow that was exactly the right place. My brain said, this ain't regulation, but my gut said, strap in, Johnny. This is some crazy quantum entanglement, bro.
Wow, Mr. Castle, I can't imagine. So tell us, do you ever miss those days?
Not the whole scene, no. I don't miss the drama or the pressure or the sweat pooling in my shoes. But I do miss the afterglow, that soft, quiet hum you feel after something beautiful happens, like when you catch the last firework of the night and everyone else has already packed up, but you just stand there and let the smoke sting your eyes, or like when you microwave a burrito and it somehow cooks evenly, edge to edge. That's rare, Lone Wolf. That's what I miss.
A lot of people ask what happened next after the summer ended, after the final show and that summer ending. Be a champ and enlighten us a bit more, please. There are eager ears around the universe that want to know where you went and what you did.
They think the story stops when the lights go out, but it doesn't. Life after Kellerman's was like putting on socks fresh out the dryer, warm, underrated, familiar in the best way. There were no dance numbers, no effing pachangas, no final bows, just mornings that tasted like toast and nights that smelled like rain. The world slowed down, and we started hearing our own thoughts again. Some people call that boring. I call it the good part.
You ever record anything about it?
I did. One night, after eating an all-cheese salad and staring at the ceiling fan for too long, I decided it was time. I wrote something, pieced together a slideshow presentation from my journal sketches and memory and just that never-ending love emulsion. I call it the soft years. It's like a mixtape made of sighs and side glances. I never meant to share it, but tonight, I don't know. The air feels just weird enough. Would you cast it for me, Mr. Wolf, kind sir?
You got it, Johnny. Echo 1090 is yours. I can speak for millions when I say we are on the edge of our seat and can't wait to see and hear it. Let it bloody rip, old pal.
Thank you, Lone Wolf. I now present to you Echo 1090 and to everyone listening and viewing at home, Johnny and Baby, the soft years. The reason I told Baby's father that nobody puts Baby in a corner. I didn't just mean it about that moment on the dance floor. I meant it about life. About how we had to get out of the corner where people put us and find our way around it. That moment was bigger than me, bigger than her. It was about pushing past everything that told us who we were supposed to be. We didn't walk out of Kellerman's just to escape a summer. We walked out to figure out who we were when nobody else was writing the story for us. After we had packed up the car, it was all trunk space and guesswork. We didn't know where we were going. We just drove north, past faded diners and old country stores with hand-painted signs. Frances, or Baby. I still called her Baby sometimes, but mostly it was Frances now. She brought her journals, a few books, and that red sweater that always smelled like summer nights. I brought my shoes and my back brace and a folded-up local map from Kellerman's that I never returned. We slept in roadside motels, plastic key tags, ice machines that barely worked, the kind of places where time just stopped. We taught a few lessons in community centers along the way. Nothing big, just enough to cover gas and coffee expenses. Frances had this way of turning any room into something warm. She'd smile and the whole place softened, even when the linoleum floor squeaked and the mirrors were cracked. There was one week in Shroon Lake where we tried to teach out of this old mechanic's garage. Smelled like oil and regret, but we cleaned it up, hung a string of lights, and told people to bring their own records. That's when I realized we didn't need fancy. We just needed space, a rhythm, and people who wanted to move. That first winter was hard, real cold. Our fingers cracked from the cold, and our breath fogged in the mornings. But something about it felt honest, like we were doing something with our hands and our feet that mattered. Nobody was watching, and somehow that made it more real. We started sending letters to old students, people from Kellerman's, even a couple from the Sheldrake who remembered our Mambo set. Some wrote back, some didn't. But one woman sent us a flyer for an old Arthur Murray studio in Binghamton. Said it had been shut for a while. Still has the mirrors, she wrote. And ghosts, probably. We found the place on a Wednesday, dust thick as snow on the window glass, the lettering on the door barely visible. Arthur Murray Dance Studio, faded gold, like someone had tried to remember a better time but couldn't quite get there. Inside, it smelled like old vinyl and aftershave. Frances sneezed. I ran my hand along the wall and it came back black. But there were the mirrors, a full line of them, some cracked but most still holding on. And the floors, they weren't warped, just needed a sanding. It was like the room had been waiting for us. We called the landlord, said we'd sweep the place, patch the cracks, and pay what we could. He said, "No one else wants it. It's yours if you can keep the roof from caving in." We slept on air mattresses in the back office for the first month, ate from takeout containers, listened to the heater rattle like it was telling stories of its own. We painted the back wall lavender. Frances picked the color, said it felt like a hug. I didn't get it at first, but she was right. It softened everything. Tuesdays and Thursdays were our beginner classes, couples mostly, people in their 60s, some in their 70s. They remembered the foxtrot and the Roomba, even if their knees didn't. One man told me, "Dancing's the only time I feel like I know what my body's doing." I knew exactly what he meant. We didn't make much, but we didn't need much either. We had a jar labeled Future Floors and another one called Next Month's Coffee. People started coming in just to sit and watch, said the room felt different, like it breathed slower. I liked that. A room with rhythm. Frances had this thing she'd say to new students. She'd say, "It's not about steps, it's about listening. The music already knows what to do. You just have to meet it." I'd watch people nod like they understood. Then trip over their own feet. But over time, they stopped thinking so much. They just moved. We kept a tiny stereo in the corner, still played some of the old tracks. Otis, the Drifters, even the Four Seasons sometimes. Frances would hum along when she swept. She taught the rumba like it was a secret. Slow, close, full of spaces where nothing happened. But everything did. I taught swing, but I slowed it down. told people dancing wasn't about big moves. It was about little moments, breath, pause, shift, connection. Some nights after everyone left, we'd stay behind and dance in the dark. No music, just the sounds of our shoes on the floor. It reminded us of that night at Kellerman's, of the lake, the lift, the log, the fire between us. That wasn't just a summer fling. It was a before and after moment. Everything changed. There's this thing that happens when you dance with someone long enough. You stop thinking about where you're going. You just go. It's not leading or following. It's more like agreeing without words. Francis and I had that, even when we were mad at each other, especially then. One night, the heater gave out completely. Snow piled against the window, and I figured no one would show. But one couple came in anyway, wool coats, cheeks red from the cold. They said, we didn't want to miss our anniversary. I told them we'd teach by candlelight, and we did. That night, Francis and I danced after they left, just to stay warm. But it turned into something else. Something bigger than the cold, bigger than the silence. It was like the room opened up, and we fell right through it, into something that felt like forever. We started collecting little things. Postcards from students, notes slipped under the door, a pair of abandoned dance shoes we couldn't throw out. Frances started calling it the memory wall. She said, if we don't remember who we were, how do we know who we are? One morning, we woke up early and walked along the stream behind the studio, the same kind of stream we danced over on that log years back. The water was quiet, reflective, and then Frances said, what if we built something? I asked what she meant. She said, a statue of us doing the lift. I laughed. Thought she was kidding, but she wasn't. She said, we owe it to that moment, to everyone who saw it and believed in something again. So we got to work, found some local artists who could help us, picked trees from along the stream, ones that had fallen naturally. We didn't want to cut anything down. The wood was heavy, honest. We carved in shifts. I took mornings. She took afternoons, evenings. We worked together. It took months, splinters, sore backs, a few arguments about how high my arms should be. But when it was done, it looked like us. Not just the pose, but the feeling, the risk, the trust, the flight. We decided to donate it to the Hungarian town where Arthur Murray was born, back when it was still Galicia, Austria-Hungary. The man who set us both on this path. We wanted it to stand somewhere quiet, somewhere that knew what it meant to survive and keep dancing. When the day came to ship it, we wrapped it in blankets and stood in silence. Frances said, this is our thank you. I said, it's our beginning. We watched the truck drive away, tail lights blinking like a goodbye. That night we held hands in the middle of the studio and didn't say anything, just listened to the creaks of the floor, the wind outside, the history we'd carved into each step. The funny thing is, once we sent that statue off, more people started showing up at the studio. Word got around, not fast, but enough. It was strange being remembered for a moment that lasted less than a minute. But that's how it works, I guess. You don't choose your legacy. It chooses you. Frances got invited to speak at a local college, not about dancing, about community. She stood in front of a room of kids who'd never heard of Kellerman's, and she told them about rhythm and risk and the importance of staying in the room when it gets uncomfortable. She said, the lift isn't about strength. It's about surrender. And they applauded like it was poetry, which it kind of was. Back at the studio, we hosted our first showcase. We called it the Long Dance. It wasn't flashy, no spotlights, just each student doing one dance they never thought they could. A waltz, a cha-cha, even a solo foxtrot by an 82-year-old woman who brought the house down. Afterward, Frances and I danced last. No announcement, no music, just movement. Some people cried, some held hands, and I thought, this is it. This is what it was always supposed to be. Not a resort, not a paycheck, just presence. We kept everything simple, just a corkboard by the door and a guest book on the counter. If someone found us, they found us. If not, maybe the story found them some other way. Frances had a notebook where she'd write things she overheard in class. She called them floor whispers, things like, I forgot I had a body, or this is the first time I've touched someone since my husband died. I read through it one night and had to sit down. These people weren't here for dance. Not really. They were here for return, for memory, for something soft in a world that kept going hard. One afternoon, I walked past a mirror and didn't recognize myself. Not because I looked different, but because I looked calm. I hadn't seen that in me before. Not even at Kellerman's. Not even with all the noise and lights and mambo sets. Frances caught me staring and said, "You finally see him?" I said, "Who?" She said, "You." I told her I never thought I'd live a quiet life. She said, "This isn't quiet, it's tuned in." And maybe she was right, because every time I stood in front of those mirrors, I could feel everything that got me here. The watermelon, the lake, the music, the shame, the courage, her hand in mine, her voice saying, you can. That's the thing. People think dancing is about learning steps, but really, it's about learning to stay in your body, to stay with someone, to stay long enough to hear what the silence is saying. One guy came in every Thursday just to sit on the bench, never danced, never talked much. After 6 weeks, he got up, took off his shoes, and said, "I think I'm ready to stop disappearing." We didn't clap, we just gave him space. That was enough. We never put up a sign that said Johnny Castle Studio. That wasn't the point. It was never about me. It was about making room for baby, for the ones who thought they were too old, too stiff, too scared. We just called it the floor. That was enough. We kept the lavender wall in the back, even when it started peeling. It felt earned. Frances said, "Let it age, like us." I liked that. There were weeks when the bills stacked up and the heater clanged like it was giving up, but somehow we made it. A donation envelope here, an old regular paying for 10 lessons in advance just to keep the lights on. We danced through the dry months like we danced through the winter. Shoulders down, frame locked, forward. Once I got asked to come back to Kellerman's, just for a reunion show. Same stage, same music. They wanted me to do the lift again. I said no. Not because I couldn't, but because that moment had already happened. It wasn't something to repeat. It was something to protect. Some things should stay one of a kind. Instead, we choreographed a new piece with our students, a blend of all the old steps, done slower, done softer, done like memory. The audience clapped before we even finished. I think they felt it, that this wasn't a performance. It was an offering. We printed the floor whispers into a little book and left it by the door for new students to read. Some cried before their first class even started. That's when I knew we were doing something real. Something that mattered beyond applause. And every so often, someone would ask me about Baby. They'd say, "Whatever happened to her?" And I'd smile, because she was never just a story. She was the reason, the reminder, the proof. She didn't stay in my corner. She walked right out of it with me, into a life neither of us could have imagined back then. And that statue we built, it stands now in a quiet town in Eastern Europe. People leave flowers at the base. Some take photos. Some just sit. But once, we got a letter from a girl who went there after losing her dad. That the statue made her feel like he was still around. That she was going to take a dance class when she got home. That's when I knew we'd done what we came to do. So if you ever ask me where I learned to dance, but I'll still tell you it started in a luncheonette with a test for instructors. But the truth is, it started the first time someone believed I was more than I thought I was. It started with a lift, but it never stopped rising.